everyone, welcome. We'll get started in just a minute.
Allison?
Yes.
We are live.
Oh, great. Okay. Go ahead and do it. All right. Letting in a couple more people from our waiting room on Zoom here. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started then. I want to welcome everyone to our virtual tour this week. My name is Allison and I'm part of the education department at the Timken. And I'm really excited to welcome you to this tour, since we can't meet in person. It's exciting that we can do things on a virtual platform. So before I turn things over to our docent for the week, I just want to go over a couple guidelines for our tour. So if you're in our Zoom room, we just ask that you keep yourself muted while the tour is going on. That way there's no kind of interruptions or loud noises or anything. And if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them in the comment box. So there's a speech bubble at the bottom of your screen on Zoom. It says chat underneath. You can click that and you can type any questions, comments, whatever throughout the tour, and then we'll do a Q&A session at the end. So we'll answer all your questions then and have a little bit of a conversation.
To mute myself, I cross the mute.
There we go. So if you're joining us from Facebook, you can also join the conversation. So you can type your comments, questions, whatever in the comment box that's underneath the video there. So whether you're joining us from Zoom or Facebook, like I said, we're happy to have you here. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our docent for the week, Becky Grawl, who is going to be presenting on one of her favorite topics, Russian icons, of which we have a great collection, and you'll get to see some from outside our collection too. So Becky, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Allison. I am just very thrilled to be given the opportunity. And I just want to thank you and Christina and the Timken Museum staff for making this possible. When I was a new docent or learning and training, we talked about the Russian icons the first time, and I just loved it. And I've just always had since then just such a love for the icons, and I'm thrilled that we have a gallery for that. Also, then right after that, I went to Russia, and so it just really was very special to me. The museum, as we see, is basically there because of two different families. The first family was the Henry Timken, and his family. He invented the ball bearings, and he brought his family to San Diego. And with that, he then, and his family, then they went ahead and they donated over $400,000 back in the 1920s to build the Museum of Art in San Diego. Well, so then, so they were very influential in that. The other family was the Putman sisters. The father was a brother to Henry Putman, who was very much a very good inventor, and they invented the bottle cap. They had the bottles of spring water, and they made a lot of money, and he was worker or in charge with his brother in that company. So the Putmans, the older one, Henry Putman, he had a son, Willie, and Willie was, he just was single and just loved life, and he always had these events. And he ended up donating over $5 million to the Putman sisters. Well, the Putman sisters, they moved here also in like 1910, 1920s, and they were three sisters, never married, very educated, loved the philosophy, and the younger sister really enjoyed Russian history and went even to Stanford to study the Russian history and language. As they got older, they didn't really go to parties. They basically stayed home, but they loved to buy art, and they purchased many of the masters from the French, the Italian, and the Americans. And it's really, and the Dutch. And with this is what we have now received. They had they would lend their paintings out to other museums across the country, and they even gave a lot of museum pieces to the San Diego Museum of Art. Unfortunately, but fortunately for us, Amy and the director then had it out. I don't know what exactly happened, but she said no more. All my paintings, all these paintings are going to go to other museums across the country. Well, a lot of people felt that San Diego should keep these paintings. So Walter Ames started the Putman Foundation along with the and with the Timken money, they were built the Timken Museum that has his name on it, and it houses the Putman sisters collection. So then they brought all the paintings back, which we are very thrilled to have. The museum inside, as many of you probably have been in, you see the different galleries. We have a total of 6 galleries. But the exhibit gallery is usually empty unless there's an exhibit. And over on your right, there is the Russian icon gallery. So we're going to just kind of go into that Russian gallery as we see it here. But before we go in, well, while we go in, we need to talk about what are icons and, why are the Russian icons so amazing? Well, icons are basically images, and the Orthodox Church used them to display as their art, to display the Bible. They display God, Jesus, saints, and also different feasts. And as you can see, this is and with this, they had not only could the people come in, but they could also bow before the icons. They could burn offerings. They can cross themselves. And some of them they felt that really had miraculous works that were able to do some miracles. And as you can see, they displayed them through on a wall, and it's called the iconostasis, and that's a screen bearing the icons. It separates the nave from the altar in the Orthodox Church. It's like the human world and the heavenly world. It divides the visible and the invisible. And through, we see the middle door there. The priests would go in and out. And then you see on the right and the left of that door, the deacons would go in and out. So these were different where would be like in the front of the church, plus you see all the frescoes. Now, many of the iconostasis have different tiers, they call them. And we see the one tier where the royal door, where the Jesus and the Mother Mary are standing. That is kind of called the local tier. The next tier above that is called the dioceses tier, and those might have more pictures of God and Jesus and everything. And then the next tier is, which this iconostasis does not have, would be the feast, and then the prophets, and then also the local prophets. As you can see, it just depends how many tiers they have, depending upon the height of the church and everything. And you can see over here on the right, you can see this is the Mary, Jesus, and Gabriel probably, and then some maybe local prophets. We see the royal door, and as we see, we're going to see this again. And that's where the priest would go in and out to prepare the sacraments. Okay, why don't we just get to the Timken Museum and the Russian Gallery. You can see that we have our iconostasis is the aces, and we have Jesus and Mary, Gabriel, and Peter, along with John the Baptist, Michael, and St. Paul. And this is our dioceses tier, and it's basically a prayer tier where they are praying to the Lord Jesus to help humanity. And as you see here, we're going to talk about this one, the 4 men in the furnace, and then on the other side, the 40 martyrs in Sebastian, in what happened to the martyrs. But we'll get to that in a second. let's just look at this. Here is something that we're going to see again. The chair has basically, it's backless, and it's the chair that Jesus will sit in on the last judgment. The uh, the last judgment, as I said, and he has it's a picture that is two-dimensional. It's called the royal doors. No, I'm sorry, this is not. This is part of the diasis. And you see him, his inner garment is red for humanity, and his outer garment is basically like a blue-green. They didn't have, blue was very expensive back then. So they went ahead and they must have mixed some blue and green, which represents divinity. So they say, well, the humanity is wrapped in the divinity of God. Jesus has on his under his left arm is the gospel, the Old Testament telling about him, and the New Testament. He has they say he's blessing the people, but it's hard to see his fingers. But in each corner on the right and the left are just are some of the prophets, and we think because of their how they are clothed that those are probably local Russian prophets. And then on our right, it's more like the other saints, i.e., Peter and Paul. You can see so this is a backless chair, and we'll look again at that when we look at the last judgment. Above we have Jesus, and then we have to our left is Mary, and Mary is she has her blue undergarment with her red, and her head is bowed with praying to Jesus for the saints. It's a two-dimensional piece of art, iconostasis, and then it's also her hands are pointing toward him and she's looking down. I wanted to say that a lot of these paintings were basically copied from the books that the different Russian schools had. So there was like 3 or 4 different schools at the time, and our paintings are predominantly from Novgorod and Moscow. And they each have they would have like their painting manual, and they would use this to copy correctly the different images, because they had down through the ages, and they would use what copies they had and hopefully paint them accordingly and from their rule book. So they would use their book or from other copies. The paint is as we see, they would take a piece of wood, and with that wood, they would make sure it's dry, and then they would cut out an area where they could put slats in the back of it. So just in case that they prevent that wood from warping, they would make sure it's dry. Then they put over it gesso, and then they would engrave and copy the image of the subject matter, in this case Mary, onto the board. And with that, then they would make sure it's dry and then do the paintings. The paintings is basically made up of water and egg yolk, and they also then put the dye in it. And if they wanted the paint to maintain itself, they would go ahead and they would put a little vinegar in it. So the more egg they put in it, the glossier it was. The less egg they put in it, it was more matted and dull. We have next to her the angel Gabriel, and he, as you see, he has he's holding a globe. And he has a spear. And he is also, his head is bent down and in prayer. And next to him is St. Peter's. And you see that his hair is gray. He and he has a blue cloak, and that, representing his divinity. And he has a scroll in his hand plus the keys, and those are the keys to heaven. And he was given those by God because he can open up heaven. The When they painted these pictures, a lot of them were they say, some sources say they started with the light and then went to the dark, but a lot of sources also, they did the dark painting to the light, and the background, the gold, which represents more of a heavenly environment, was painted last, along with any inscription and any other areas they may want to put gold threads through the garments. Okay, on our right, Jesus's left, we have John the Baptist. And you see that he is probably wearing very humble clothes. He was not a man of means, but he was the one that baptized Jesus. The next one to him is Michael, the angel Michael, and Michael also has a globe and the shaft, the spear. And what he is, he's going to be the angel that fights the last battle when Jesus comes to during the second coming and he will destroy Satan, him and his team. And the very last is Paul. Paul has a book in his hand, and Paul is known to probably have written over 2/3 of the New Testament. He is, it's probably his books. He wrote the Revelations, and very interesting. He is seen to be bald. And now, why they thought Paul was bald, maybe he was, but maybe he wasn't. But usually if you see a character and they're bald, it probably is Paul. Okay, our next slide is the royal doors that all these icons are underneath it. And remember, I said earlier, look at those doors. A lot of the icons are painted or shown, but because each school did it a little differently, so you'll see some that are the same, and you will see some that are not. And maybe like the baby Jesus will be on Mary's left, maybe baby Jesus will be on Mary's right, but and the different colors that each school may use. Now it's pretty. I've only seen one royal door, where they also call it the Zard door, but where the priest would go through, and it didn't have the scene, but it had a different scene. But usually what happens is these are the regular where you will find them. The Ascension at the top, where there's Gabriel, and then Mary, and angels. I think I see angels in the background. And then there is on our left side is John, who they say is dictating probably Revelation to his assistant. And then after that is Luke. They feel is at the bottom, and their backgrounds and their tables that they have basically have instruments for writing: scissors, ink, stylus. So we have Luke at the bottom, and then over to the right we have Matthew and Mark. But these doors are these scenes in this order is very common in Russia. Our next one is a very beautiful, called the Mother of God, Georgian Mother of God. I've also seen it as Jerusalem Mother of God. And we see here that it's beautiful. And it has Mary, who has Jesus on her left hip, and she is pointing to him, and it represents, that he is the way. We notice too that she has an outer garment, and it has 3 stars, but we're only able to see 2 of the stars, and it represents before, during, and after the birth of Christ, her virginity. On the above her are some symbols that have different letters written in on the right and the left top, and it says Mother of God. She is, like I said, pointing to him, and he looks like he looks like almost a grown man, even though he's supposedly to be a toddler. You see the gold, and he has a scroll, and he has in the right hand, he's holding a plant, which represents the wheat, or could represent the Eucharist. Mary here has, these all were, like I said, our icons in the Russian gallery are anywhere from the 14th to 17th century. They're all from the different schools that I mentioned. And it's also during the Byzantine era where a lot of the artists, their nose is long, they portray, it's a two-dimensional figure. The lines are very linear, and their fingers, as you can see, are long, and their eyes are large, plus they are almond shaped. And the words above Jesus is, it says the Son of God, and then or Jesus Christ, and I think it's IXCX, something like that. And then he has a halo with a cross in it, plus he in there are the Greek letters for I am. And God, we know when Moses said, who should I say you are? What is your name? And he said, I am. We have here, there you see a lot of holes in this painting. And with that, we have a lot of the paintings had like covers, casings made out of either copper or silver alkaloid. And it covered basically most of the icon, except for the central figures, the faces. And they would nail these, the gold casings, yellow, copper casings or silver casings onto the icon. And we see a lot of the nail marks on this picture, and they have been removed. The gold background also represents a heavenly environment. Okay. Then we look across from Mother Mary. And before I forget, this icon did hang over the fireplace for at the Putman sisters' house. And it was also brought from northern Russia. And Ivan the Great brought it and put it in the church that he had built, the Dormition Cathedral. So it's been around, and it's really amazing. The next is they would have icons that represented saints. And I also just remember those casings that they had over these icons. A lot of the people would go up and kiss. And so I think it's better to kiss the casing than the canvas of the icon. And so they would to worship this icon. Now here we have Saint Basil, and or Saint Basil. He is in the center, and he was a remarkable man. He has 14 little boxes or squares around him that kind of depict his life. We see on his shoulder the crosses, and it kind of represents, because there's 3 crosses, 2 in the front and 1 in the back, and that represents as the cross that maybe Jesus bared, and carried, during as he was heading to his crucifixion. So it represents the cross. He has in his left hand, our right, a book, the Bible, and a cloth, and then also he is pointing, like giving a blessing to the people. And we have Jesus on our left and Mary on our right above. Now, when you look at it, the first over here to the is where he was born. It was his birth. And then him being taught the scriptures, his education. And then here they say that him and St. George, that's where the Holy Spirit guided them to write some of their literary works. And then here his baptism. As we go down, we see his miracles, and as things of his teaching, he's teaching and witnessing as we go down. On this side here, he becomes a bishop. That little square represents he's a bishop, and it reveals that he to his other he reveals to Saint Embrem the pillar of fire. I don't see the fire in there, but they say it is. And this is also he ordains other people. And his miracles, where the people saw his miracles, and the miracles of forgiveness of sins for the repentant widow, and then his funeral, as we see here. As we see, this is interesting. They're taking him to bury him. And if you read different sources on the last, at the bottom right, they're saying one says, oh, they're burying him. And then the other one says, oh, he was about ready to be buried, but they opened his coffin and they took the rites, the relics out of it. And so I'm like, holy cow. The thing about Saint Basil, he was very known. His family was very wealthy and extremely religious, and his sister became a nun, and his brothers became priests and bishops. So, and he eventually he went there, and around the 330s, he was very well known. He really cared about the people, and he built hospitals, food banks. He did whatever he could to help the people. He also he felt really strong about certain things, and he developed the Nicene Creed, and he disagreed with some of the other bishops, but he was very focused. Some people would say, oh, he was just so kind and friendly, where other people said, oh, he's haughty and mean. So I guess that you have to look, who are we talking to? And but I think he did a lot of good things for the people, and that's what we like. The next one is on a tablet, and this is on the one side of the tablet, the 40 martyrs of Sebaste, and on the other side is the 4 men in the furnace. Well, it's like a double icon, and you could carry it around. A lot of people may have used it in their homes for worship, and maybe take it for travel with them. So, and because churches weren't that prevalent, this was a way that people could have their worship and their prayers. And like I said, a lot of them were made from the feast, and also feast and of God and of Jesus. And this one tells, and I looked it up, and I think it did happen. It was kind of around the 300s, the 40 martyrs of Sebaste. And you see here, the story is that Constantinople, he became a Christian, and so he he was the ruler emperor of the western part of Rome, where Linus, he was the emperor of the east side of Rome, and he was a pagan. Well, Constantinople said, we're going to operate these kingdoms as Christians. Well, Linus said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do what I want to do. So there just happened to be right outside of the city, people that were very the Roman soldiers. So what they did then, he said he tried to convert them to paganism. They says, no, we love God, and we are going to. You can take our life or our military recognition, but we want. We are not going to agree or bow down to a god. So he thought, okay, I'm going to kill him. So he had other soldiers throw stones at him, and those stones came back and would hit the people that thrown them. And they go, oh no. So they said, I know, we're going to have them undressed, and we're going to put them in the lake, the freezing lake. And just to tease them, we're going to put a house here, a warm house, like a sauna right next to them. So these people, as they were out in the water, these soldiers, they had a vision during the night of Jesus. And we see the body his hands out and blessing the people. And then yet here over on this side, we see 39 crowns. And then we see 1 crown here. Well, so for a total of 40, but the 39 here. So what they were told by Jesus to persevere and that everything was going to be okay. Well, during the night, one of the Roman soldiers saw that this soldier, he said, well, you know, it's way too cold. I'm going into sauna. Well, as soon as he got into the sauna or into this house, he dropped dead. So this soldier here, he's like, wow, you know, he could see the light over these people. He could see Jesus over these people. And he said, you know, I believe in God. He woke up his um, the other soldiers, and they went ahead and said, you know, I'm a Christian, and he jumped into the water to take the place. So the 39 crowns went to these guys, and then this one over here went to this soldier here. Well, they're still alive, and the water becomes warm. So the other soldiers woke up and said, this is not good. So they took them out, broke their legs, and then burned them in fire and threw their ashes in the water. Well, one of the bishops or priests came and was told to gather up their ashes, and he did. And you know, and they have been known now as saints. As we said, you can see many different facial types and also different styles of hair. And I just think this is really a remarkable painting. The next one on the opposite side that you're looking at is the 4 men in the fiery furnace. And with that, you have what happened was the Israelites, I guess, were not obeying God, and he warned them. And so he sent Nebuchadnezzar, and they took back about, I would say at least 90% of the Israelites to Babylon. Out of them, they picked several of the more educated Israelites, and they trained them for 3 years to learn the language, to learn the customs and the culture. But the men that were in, these 3 men loved God, and these 3 men loved God, and they and they were very respected by Nebuchadnezzar. Well, Nebuchadnezzar's happy, things are going well, and he decides he's going to throw himself a party, and he even creates an image of himself. And we see this in the background, and it can be missed. And when I first looked at this, I didn't even see this image. And once I read about it, I go, oh, there it is. But that's an image of him, and he invited all his, I guess, administration, all the people in authority to come to the party, and he had his, when the band would play and quit playing, they would have the people would bow. Everyone but Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Those 3 here. They were, and so Nebuchadnezzar is concerned because he likes these guys. And so they did it again. The band played, and when it stopped, they went ahead and they, everyone bowed down to the idol, and except for these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so now Nebuchadnezzar's getting really upset. He goes, now, when the band stops playing, and if you have not bowed down to me, I'm going to throw you in the furnace, and I'm going to make it really hot. Well, the band was playing, and it quit playing, and I think the song was Baby Light My Fire. And when it quit playing, these 3 men did not bow down. So he took them and threw them in the furnace. As you can see, their faces look the same. They kind of have the same look, and they're walking around and talking to them. And below that, we see, the furnace was set by the people here, and they made it 7 times hotter. These people could be unconscious due to the heat, or they could be dead due to the heat. So, and they have the clothing, they say, that is kind of like what the slaves or the servants would wear. We have, like I mentioned, the idol. And then we have, I guess the party wasn't any fun. So Nebuchadnezzar, who's wearing kind of royal clothing, decides to come and watch. And he sees, he says, I threw 3 men in, but there's a fourth. And some people believe that fourth person was Jesus, and some feel it was an angel, and the angel was protecting them. So here, they weren't being burned, and they were just talking and walking around. And so Nebuchadnezzar let them out. They didn't even have the smell of smoke on their clothes. And he says, this is amazing. Your God is very important. And he went ahead and gave them a promotion. Now, I would not advise that to do that with my boss to get a promotion, but hey, they 3 of them got a promotion. The next one is the Ascension of the Lord Jesus Christ. And here we have is a very beautiful, and this is part of the feast um, um, tier. And also, before I forget, the 40 men of Sebasti, they had, that is also part of the feast tier. And they just had it 2 days ago where they would celebrate the 40 martyrs, Sebasti. And so it was March 9th. So if we didn't go to church, or if we did, we would have, an Orthodox church, we would have been celebrating it. Here on the Ascension of our Lord Jesus Christ is 16th century, and you see it's usually rectangle, and we see Mary and her, I guess that's a dark red, and then red here, or dark blue, and her halo, and we see the 2 angels, and then the 12 disciples. And there's 6 here, and there's 6 here. And we see Jesus ascending after he came, after he came, he and death, he came and talked to the people. And then he ascends to heaven. We have him, he's in his gold, I think it's gold, gold outfit, along with 2 angels. Here we have is, you see it's a rectangle frame. Well, during the time, and I think it was more during the time of Ivan the Terrible, they liked round icons. They didn't really like the rectangle or square ones. So you see where it was probably cut, this icon, and it was made, it was more circular, as we see. And they did that and had that. And then after a while, that became in disfavor, and they decided to make them all rectangle or square. And so with this, they went ahead, and you can kind of see the cracks. They think they went ahead and added all this extra wood back. And here's the crack also. And then they think they took it from the wood to make it a rectangle again from an old icon. Our last but not least is the Last Judgment. And this is a very busy slide, and it can be a very intimidating slide. And when I first saw it, I thought, holy cow. And but if you look at it in tiers, we have like the first tier, the second tier, the third tier, the fourth tier, and then the 5th tier. If you look at it in tiers, it does make sense. And some people say you can look at it horizontally, or you can look at it vertically, where they call this the divine corridor, and then this goes to the river of blood. And there's many icons of the Last Judgment, and they have a lot of the similar things in it, but they also have many different things in it. So we can start probably in the center, and we have Jesus here, and he's sitting there, and I would say this is probably taken right before he comes down to do the judgment. And I'll share with you why I think so. And I could be wrong, but we see Jesus in a gold outfit, and we see on both sides of him is Mary and Saint and John the Baptist. And we see right below here, this is Adam and Eve. They are begging for humanity, whereas Mary and John the Baptist are praying for humanity. This would be the Deasis tier, you could say. And here we have the apostles, along with behind them the angels. And if we look down, we see the chair that is empty. Remember I said the first chair, of Jesus right above the royal doors. Well, this is the chair, and the chair that is Jesus is going to take. And it has on it like the Gospels, and you see a cross in the background. So, but Jesus is not sitting in this chair. It is an empty chair. We have many of the, not the apostles, but a lot of the saints. And then, oops, how did that happen? And we have many of the saints and here, but then on here we have Moses. I'll tell you, I'm going to leave. We have Moses, and he is basically pointing to the people on his left, our right. The way is Jesus Christ. Now let's go up a little further, and we see the new city of Jerusalem, and it has the fathers, the apostles in there, and that's the way the old Jerusalem will be gone, but the new Jerusalem will come. We have God here, and we see also there's they say scroll, but they say in Revelation they're rolling up the sky, and it represents there's the sun, which will turn black, and then the moon, which will be blood, and we have the two angels there. I'm going to quit touching this. On our the right, there is Jesus, and then Jesus standing before God, and then the next is him sitting next to God. And we see there are 12 desks with the 12 books open. Now, maybe those books represent the people that are and their deeds, the good deeds and the bad deeds. We can come and down here, and then we kind of come past the chair, and here we see the scale. Now, here we're trying to decide what are the, and they're weighing the deeds of the people. Did you do good, or did you do bad? And the good, you go to heaven. The bad, you go to purgatory or hell. And we see here, there's a little, the devil, he's trying to weigh that in down. And that's not nice. That's not very good. We see here we have Mary being tended to by angels, and then they say this is Daniel. It's hard to see, but him foretelling of the Christ to come. The here is the snake. It's or Satan, and supposedly he is he's biting these Moses. And as the snake goes down, we see the circles, and those represent various sins that you should not commit. And they come down, and then they go into the river of fire. Below all of this, we have Adam, Isaac, and also Jacob. And then they say John the Baptist on this side of heaven, the doors to go through heaven. And then they have the people that are trying to decide, okay, will I get into heaven or will I not? The good deeds of heaven, and then also the bad deeds and hell over here. But I find it very interesting, and it is a very busy slide. Our next is, I'd like just to share a few minutes, our last few minutes of my trip. I had an opportunity right after we studied the icons to go to Russia. I took a train for 2 weeks across Russia, the Siberian Express, and we started out in Moscow. And this is the Cathedral of the Dormition. And you see the northern doors, where the people would go over here on your left. It is located in the Red Square, and it is totally amazing. It was built by Ivan the Terrible. Here inside the church, and it's amazing. These pictures were obtained from books, because the pictures I had, it was packed, and I really couldn't get any really good pictures. And there were different chapels, but you see here, like this is like the royal door, and then the feast, the deities, and then the prophets, and then on up. And here is also really neat as you go up. They have like, okay, the deities, the feast, the prophets, and then their forefathers are saints that they had in Russia when we're looking right at the ceiling. And it was just an amazing place. And this was the door that it looks just like very similar to ours. We have Jesus on the throne, and then Mary and Angel Gabriel. And then on our right is also John the Baptist. And that looks very similar to ours. And that was in another chapel. But I just think it's just so, so beautiful, just so beautiful. And it's truly amazing. And I hope you have a chance to go. Next to it, or down, about a block or two away in the Red Square, is the St. Basil Cathedral. Now, it was not named after the saint that we just talked about, but their local saint. And it's just truly beautiful. And if you look at the right picture, you can see it looks like a flame. It looks like a flame. And I'm going to stop moving this. And you see they had the central church. And then each battle or each victory that Ivan the Terrible had, he would build another cathedral that was next to it. And then he had another another victory. And so it ends up to having about 8 little chapels or churches around it. It was it's very beautiful inside. And with that is it was a church until like about 1918 when the Bolshevik Revolution, and they shut it down for a while, made it a museum, and then they just started doing services there since 1997. I had a situation, I guess I could tell you. This is some of the things inside, and now that place was packed. There was a tour guide who did not want our group to come in into one of the little chapels because there was music there, and he just wanted it for his people. So me and this girl found the way in the back way. Well, the tour guide didn't like us coming in, listening to the music as we look at all the icons. So he tried to push me against the icons. Well, the people were very upset. Now I'm thinking, I just met this group, and I'm in Russia, and we don't have right now the best relationships with Russia. And so I kind of composed myself and I moved forward. And then he moved forward and kept trying to push me into the icons, but I stood firm. Then I moved back, and he would move back and still try. So I was getting mad. And so unfortunately, sometimes I don't think when I say something, but I basically told him if he did it again, he was going to lose a part of his anatomy. And he laughed and he moved on. So I'm glad I didn't cause an international incident. Now here, these are just beautiful. And as you can see, the tears, all the tears that they put. As the train, and then here's the doors with the apostles, with the Ascension, and the Gabriel and Mary. And then also here are the apostles. John are the 4 writers of the gospel. And here again, now when we went, we stopped at the city of Edinburgh, and it was very, very interesting because I think they were going to have the Olympics, and there everyone wanted to see the house where the Tsar and his family was murdered. We know that they took him to this house, and then one night, because the white guards were getting close, they went ahead and told these people to dress in travel clothes. So what they did, a lot of the girls in their clothing, they had sewn in their jewelry, and because they didn't want to carry it with them, but they had all in their bussets and in their dresses. So they take them down to the basement. They think they're going to get a travel picture, but then what happened was the guards came and they murdered these people. Well, two of the girls didn't die right away because they think that the bullets deflected off these jewels. So unfortunately, they went ahead and finished their job. So in around 2000, when the Olympics are coming, everyone wants to go to this house, their house where they were murdered. And this was an embarrassment for Russia. So they decided no, and they tore that house down and they built the Church of the Blood in honor of all the saints of the family. And this is the church. Now, this is the upstairs on the right. And the doors, you can see once again the Ascension and Mary, and then the Evangelist. And if we would look, we would see the other chairs. The problem, and then we would go to the chapel downstairs. That was the basement that they were murdered in. And these were the icons, and you have the Jesus, and then you have the Tsar and the little boy, and then his wife. Then we went and we traveled just a little and further, and there, in the past, they have been these people that disagree. They came out with a creed, and there was a lot of that changed things, and there were a lot of people that did not agree or believe, and so they were called the old believers, and the people that did agree were called the new believers. Well, they were persecuted. And so a lot of them left the big cities and they went and they started their own towns in Russia and Siberia. And this is Siberia. And then in all over the world. Well, we stopped there and we went to the church, and that was great. It had a few icons, but we were not allowed to take pictures. But then we went to the museum. Now, this is just a room. It's cold in there. There's no way to monitor the temperature or the humidity. And I was just shocked and stunned to see these icons, and you can tell that they are deteriorating, but there are a lot of them out there, but they really need to have a lot of work. You can see the difference from Moscow and the city is I can't pronounce it, but it starts with the T, and these are the icons. Well, I want to say thank you so much, and thank you for going on my journey with me through Russia, and I hope you will find the icons just as amazing as I do. And it's just so wonderful. And when we get back into the Timken, we will definitely have a chance to see them firsthand. Thank you.
You so much. Yeah, we can all give her a virtual round of applause. Yeah, that was great. And yeah, I second your sentiment there that, it's nice to see them like this, but even better in person, because those details, I mean, if you think about like the Last Judgment, all of those little figures, you really have to be there in person to kind of get up close. But yeah, I loved your photos from your trip as well, seeing them more in their context, how they actually would have been hung in churches and how people would have experienced them is really interesting. So we have a little bit of time for a question and answer session. I do have a question from the chat that I wanted to get to, which is kind of how did people in the artists at the time, in Russia, base their figures? So were their figures supposed to look more historical, or were they supposed to look more like people at their contemporary time? Someone asked, were the faces based on people that the artist knew? Were the clothes representative of kind of the medieval Russia, or was it more supposed to be like, the first few centuries?
They were supposed to be like the first few centuries, and they said that there were like someone had Jesus had taken maybe, or Mary had taken and took a cloth and wiped their face. And from that came the image of Christ and the image of Mary. And so with that, they used that as like the main way. They said, this is the way Jesus looks. And they would draw the figures and the faces and like the way of that cloth. And then that was supposed to be carried down throughout the years.
So yeah, it was more kind of, I don't know, the more universal kind of church, like things that people were doing in the Mediterranean. Like it was interesting because Christ's face could kind of, it was all based off the same thing you're saying.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
great. Let me see if there were any other yeah, do we know anything about kind of, yeah, on that note, kind of influence? So someone asked, did these artists see other representations of the saints that they used for models? Like kind of where was the inspiration? Was there any kind of maybe cross-cultural inspiration, or where were they getting these models from?
Yeah. Well, once again, they would use what people that that started say this is the way Jesus looks, and they would have books, their books, and also their painting books, and there would be models. Maybe it would be drawn in their painting books. But it was said by one of the archbishops during that time, and if you notice there's two, and I forgot to mention this. There are two paintings on the wall. The Jesus is that they don't look the same. There's a little different in their background, and so they was from a different school, they believe. But the archbishop felt that a lot of it did change some over time, according to what the artists may have wanted to do, not what they were supposed to do. And because they had a huge, I guess, Turkish invasion around Constantinople. And so a lot of them moved, a lot of these painters moved from Turkey to our present day Turkey to Moscow. And he said it was due to some of their influences that there was a lot of changes.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. Like after, I guess the Ottomans took over Constantinople,
Right.
the end of the Byzantine Empire, they moved to Russia. Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's really interesting. But
And
yeah,
they
just
said,
what you were saying in the beginning about the books, that we had different schools and they would kind of work off these books, right? That had kind of, they were almost like manuals, I guess.
mhm. And they really, you could walk in and then be trained, and maybe some artists will just do one part or two parts of the icon, then the other, and then someone else will do another part, over time. Maybe you will be assigned to do the gold. And they said you can even tell by looking at the face color. They called it Sankir, Sankir, that you could tell, a lot of people could tell by looking just at the tones of the skin, the painting, which schools and when they were made.
Oh, wow. Just by like the pigment and stuff. Wow.
Right.
Huh. All right. Well, anyone else have any questions from our audience? You can go ahead and unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. You can also put it in the chat and I'll read it for you if you're shy. But yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. No? Well, we did have a couple comments, just people saying thank you, and someone noted that it was really helpful to learn the kind of significance behind each figure and their whole story, and it's so interesting, I think, how like in the one of Saint Basil, you see Saint Basil, but it's also like his whole life represented around him, and you might not know that just from looking at it, and so it kind of goes back to that idea of like the details, and that struck me on the Last Judgment too, like how we know who, like, that's Isaac and that's Moses, like even though they're just these little figures. So it's amazing how
Yeah,
much narrative they can put into one piece of art.
very much so. Very true. Yes.
All right, well, if there's
Well,
no questions, yeah, I wanted to see one last time.
I just hope everyone will learn more and more. It's just amazing. And obviously, you could tell I enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, your kind of firsthand experience really helps kind of flesh all this out. So thank you so much again, Becky. We really appreciate you giving this tour. And yeah, we hope that you can give another one in the future. As for everyone else, thank you for joining us, whether on Facebook or on Zoom. As a reminder, we have these tours every week. So every Thursday at 11 a.m. on Zoom or on Facebook Live. You can get there through our Facebook page or through our website, timkenmuseum.org, and then you go to the events tab. And next week, we actually have two lectures or tours. So we have the one on Thursday at 11 a.m., but the day before that, on Wednesday at 11 a.m., we have a kind of broader lecture where one of our docents, Karen, will be looking at French art in the 19th century and kind of looking at the development from neoclassical paintings to Impressionist paintings. So the whole kind of history of French art in that century. So that's going to be 11 a.m. on Wednesday. And then we have another one of our Timken tours on Thursday at 11 a.m. So we hope to see you at one or both of those. But until then, have a great week. Thank you all so much.
Bye.